You?
All right. Look like you're in a faraway land. Where are you?
Well,
Your background doesn't look like India, though. Yeah. We can start now.
looks like all temple.
It looks like temple. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, so good, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you, our participants here. Thank you. We we met with many of you last time, a month ago. So thank you for um, joining us again. This is the second workshop in our series. And our theme today is the interviews, job doc, and offers. Last time uh, we had a pretty nice discussion about how best to present your case. So we will focus on the next phase in your interview process. But before I do that, I want to talk about the program a little bit very quickly. We started this program over 5 years ago. I think it was started during COVID. We wanted some um, mechanism some program where we can help students in the market because production operations management conference in May, so it's not very conducive to helping them in the fall semester. So I appreciate it, Rakesh, and I've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. I don't remember, but this has been one of the nicest experiences that I've had as part of being production operations management. Um, we have I want to thank Sushil. Sushil always extended wonderful support for this initiative. And of course, without Rakesh, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Um, we have two distinguished panel members. I probably no introductions necessary for them, but for the sake of formality, I'm going to introduce them anyway, very briefly. We have Professor Michael Galbraith. He's a professor of business analytics and statistics at University of Tennessee, the Haslam College of Business. He's the Pilot Corporation Chair of Excellence there, also head of the department. So he's wearing multiple hats. He served on the faculty of University of South Carolina prior to that, and plus also he's come from the consulting world. He was at KPMG and Anderson Consulting for a number of years. He received his PhD from Vanderbilt. He is a well-known scholar in our field, published extensively in our premium journals, Management Science, Production Operations Management, Journal of Operations Management, MISQ, Marketing Science. It's a pretty impressive list of scholarly accomplishments. He is currently department editor for JOM, Journal of Operations Management. He's a senior editor for Production Operations Management. He's a department editor for Decision Sciences as well. So, Mike, thank you so much for doing this. You have done this before. We certainly appreciate you being with us today. Thank you, Mike. Our next panel member is Professor Craig Fraley, and I hope I'm not. Did I do this right? It's pronounced about 6 different ways. So, Professor Fraley is currently a professor for in the Department of Operations, Business Analytics and Information Systems at the University of Cincinnati. That's the Carl H. Linder College of Business. He's also a faculty in the Department of Emergency Medicine. College of Medicine is a courtesy department at Cincinnati. He previously served as department head, so he's an experienced administrator. Of course, he published extensively in our journal. He is probably one of the well-known scholars in the field of operations research and operations management, healthcare. His publications have appeared in a long list of healthcare journals, in addition to our journals, Production Operations Management, JOM, and MSOM. So please join me in welcoming Professor Fraley for the first time. Thank you, Craig. Finally, a person probably doesn't need an introduction at all, Professor Subodha Kumar. Professor Subodha Kumar is very well known in the field. He is also, are you the president-elect or the president? I get confused with that, Subodha. You're the president-elect or the president now?
Yeah, I'm still president-elect.
Elect, okay, he's the president-elect. He's Paul R. Anderson Distinguished Chair Professor of Statistics Operations Data Science, and he's the founding director of the Center for Business Analytics and Disruptive Technologies at Temple University. He is it'll take the whole hour to list all his accomplishments, but he was a fellow of Inform's Information Systems Society that was awarded in 2023. He's also the fellow of Production Operations Management Society, awarded in 2009. He has previously served on the faculty at University of Washington, and of course, as my colleague, few doors from here at Texas A&M University for a number of years. He also teaches, he served on the faculty of Indian School of Business, one of the premier business schools in India. He is currently the deputy editor for production operations management and the founding executive editor for management and business review. So, plus he has served on the many editorial boards. So please join me in welcoming Professor Subodh Kumar from Temple University. Subodh, thank you, sir. So some of the ground rules for our participants. If you have a question, I think Rakesh muted all of you. If you have questions, put it on the chat. Either me, Rakesh, or one of the panel members will respond to you. Please send your questions. It's important that we have a meaningful and vibrant conversation about this, because we're spending your time here. So, but I want to ask the panel first. I think our new scholars might be curious. Just, can you give us one takeaway from your career? Just one takeaway from your career that had a sizable impact on your career. Right? There was something. All three are very distinguished colleagues. You have done so many things. I have no idea how you manage all this, but tell us something about a career that really made a huge difference to where you are today. Craig, you go first, Craig.
Wow. So many people have offered so much advice over the years. A lot of it has been extremely useful. Trying to isolate some of the more pithy suggestions. Well, I mean, not to sound cliche, but I think one of the early pieces of advice I was given was, just work on things you love. This career takes so much effort, and we get really so little comparatively positive feedback, especially if you've had some reviews returned recently. You'll know what I'm talking about. That you really have to have that internal motivation and drive to get through it. Yeah, so I'll try and think about a better answer, but I don't know. Mike?
Mike?
Yeah, the same thing came to my mind as well. But yeah, life's too short to work this hard on something that you don't really enjoy and look forward to working on at work. And the other thing that came to my mind that kind of has been important for my career is co-authors. And I've been really fortunate. I think it's really important to think about finding people that you work really well with and leveraging those relationships. So I owe a lot of my success to just a couple co-authors who I've found that we have good synergies, we work well together, and really invested in those relationships. So to me, one of the biggest differences, a couple names that come to mind right away that I can think of that, without having collaborated with them, my career might have taken a very different path. So I think finding people that you work really well with together and kind of investing in those co-author relationships is really important.
So one thing I think I have found very useful over time in my career is that how, or maybe it's a combination of things. When you work on the project, especially in the early part of your career, you have to see what you bring to the table. And that's why people would like to work with you. So you have to create some expertise that your co-authors or other people in the field would like to work. And that would happen only if you keep learning new things and keep reinventing yourself, both in terms of methodology and domain. And I agree, you have to work on what you like and all. I completely agree with that. But having finding the place where you can learn new things, have interest in them, and show it to the community, that I think can really take you very far in the career.
Thanks to both. So I want to change the theme today is again making your case. Today's job interviews. To be very specific, our today's interviews, job talk, and offer. So we have a next session, which is a month from now, and I bring in PhDs who were in the market last year. These are first-year assistant professors. So they will have a lot of perspectives as to what went well, what didn't go well in the market last year. So we do that as a closing session a month from now. But today we'll focus on job interviews. So here I made the preliminary cut, and we all know we've been through this. I made the preliminary cut, and I got a 30-minute job interview or 20 minutes on Zoom or at a conferences, at one of the conferences. So how best I make my case in literally get 20 minutes. We all know how fast that goes. So I want you to give some of your perspective on how best to make your case in a matter of 15 to 20 minutes to somebody who might be talking to you over Zoom or in person in conferences. Mike, you want to go first because I called on Craig last time.
Sure. Yeah, it's very difficult in 15, 20 minutes for both sides. It's difficult for you to get across everything that you can bring to the table. And it's also very difficult for the people on the other side to try to make that assessment. Yeah, I think kind of some of this may sound pretty straightforward, but, show that you're prepared specifically for this interview. They want to do more than just hear you kind of summarize your research. They can read the abstract, right? Or they can read the paper, but you're prepared to talk to this school. You know a little bit about that school. You're prepared to talk about why you applied to that school, why you really are. You kind of emphasize to them that you really are interested. And then, and I'll talk about this more kind of the job talk part, but they're assessing more than just your research. They're assessing your ability to articulate your research in an accessible way. You want to be practiced on that. And then I think to the extent that you can, try to talk about more than just your dissertation paper. Maybe some of here's where I see my research going, right? Yes, this is your paper. We have your paper. We can read it. But here's where because, when they're assessing you, they want someone who's going to be long-term successful. They want to see you have a research agenda. You know where you're going next with your research. So if you could, I always like it when people spend a little bit of time saying, here's my paper, but then here are 3 or 4 more exciting ideas that I've either started on or I'm getting started on. I think that is a good signal that you can have a good trajectory. So between that and being able to articulate specifically, if you're talking to the University of Tennessee, why did you apply to the University of Tennessee? And being ready for that and showing enthusiasm when people are meeting with 15, 20 candidates in a day, maybe it informs or DSI, it's nice. You can stand out a little bit by trying to make a more personal connection to the specific institution.
So Mike, what are some of the don'ts, Mike?
Don't just kind of very monotonously go through your results. Okay, well, in my paper, I have 3 propositions. Proposition 1 shows this. Proposition 2 shows this. Again, don't do things that I could have read. I assume you have a paper, or I'm coming to your talk, right? If at a conference, I'll see that. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time kind of regurgitating your dissertation research. I would talk more about things like maybe why I got excited about this topic, what I want to do next, as opposed to just kind of systematically going through the results of your research.
Subodha, how best to prepare, make your case in 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, I will add to it what Mike was saying. Absolutely correct. Means people are not there to just listen to all the results and all that. They can always come to your talk if they have to go into those details. See, you have to utilize that time wisely. And one thing that you should not just use the same strategy for all the schools. You should also see who's interviewing and all you can tailor. But the most important thing is then whatever you talk about, it gives you first of all, they should be interested in listening to you. At any point, if they're not interested, then you have lost the chance they will come. Now, how can I make them interested? Talk about the interesting aspect of your research. Like, for example, why this is an interesting problem. You found something cool. There you talk about it. But don't just get started. I have been in interviews where I see they just take off on the research. You have to first see what they're looking for. So prepare yourself for those scenarios that if they are first asking that, tell us your vision. So you should be ready for that rather than, just go with your research. If they say that, talk us about your research, focus on the interesting aspect that they want to ask more. If they want more details, they can always ask more. So don't just keep going on all the result. And the another thing that is very important is take pauses to see the gaze. Just don't keep going on. Even if you have a lot to say, you have worked for 5 years, of course, you have a lot of stuff to talk about. Take pauses. First, start with the most interesting hooks in your research. See what they say. If they want to know more or if they want to go in different directions about your future research, you start on that. But be ready for all the scenarios. Some of the schools would like to just hear about your research. Also, you have to give an impression that you know more than anybody else about that work. And that should come out very intelligently without getting into technical details. Even if your advisor knows more than you about your research, is a problem. Nobody in the world should know more about you. Means this is your dissertation, and that should come out very nicely without getting too technical. So rehearse on how I will react to different. How will I prepare if somebody asks just on research? What are the things I will start with? If they ask my future goals or what I will do, how you would answer your future research goal? If they ask about my vision in general, how would I answer that? If somebody pushes more on the teaching side, how would you answer that? Where would I take pause when I'm talking about the research? So be prepared for that. But the key thing is that they should be interested in knowing more rather than feeling like, oh, when is this guy going to stop? That's what you need to worry about in this 15-20 minutes. Yeah.
You're muted, Bala.
Bala, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I chaired a number of faculty searches in my career. I did the last year for A&M. Give an example. We had, we narrowed down the committee, and I worked together, narrowed down about 10 people to talk to on Zoom first, even before the conference, because the conference is a very precious time. So we thought we'll do some work before the conference. And they look fantastic in paper. Some of them look fabulous in a paper. But I can tell you that in the first 10 minutes after the conversation, we knew we would not consider them any further because they just wasn't the energy and the interest and the excitement that you expect to see when they're for jobs. So the same question I'm gonna ask you, Craig. How do you generate that excitement? When we have the very first time you meet with potential employers, 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, so this is your first chance to be a 3D person, not just a two-dimensional profile on paper. I really like the guidance that was offered just a few minutes ago. I think one of the useful aspects that I advise my students and that I still use when I go visit other institutions is prep by looking at the faculty's profiles, right? Read what they're working on, look at their papers, look at their abstracts. You might find something that's really relevant, and if only you're more familiar with who they are. Your job during this online interview, this preliminary 15-20 minutes, is really kind of to relate your background to their needs, and to emphasize or convey that there is a level of fit, right? If there's not a level of fit, you probably are as disinterested in them as they are in you. But if there is fit, you want to make sure that they realize that. So one of the best practices that I have found is using every second that you have, right? If they say, do you have any other questions? And you still have 3 or 4 minutes left, don't say nope, right? Have some questions in your pocket that you can always answer that's going to take up the rest of the time. Even something as generic as, so tell me about the culture of your department, right? That they could spend an hour talking about that, right? But ultimately, that initial interview is really more about them becoming more comfortable with the idea of you and your personality and who you are and your level of polish and professionalism and your friendliness. You can ask questions to them, but really you learning about them is going to happen at the campus visit. And so that's really going to be your opportunity to absorb what they have to offer. So that's my take on it.
So I want to kind of move on to, let's suppose that, I impressed the heck out of those colleagues that spoke at the conference as well on Zoom. So I'm lucky enough to get a campus visit. You know how we all know that you get 150 applications for one position. So you're lucky enough to be one of the 4 or 5 that invite to campus. So I want to talk about job talk, how best to prepare, keeping in mind the diverse nature of our audience. Our audience are quite diverse in many, many programs. So give us some guidance on how best to prepare your job. Typically, you get about 45 minutes, plus of a Q&A. How best you make your case once you're on campus? Subodh, you're going to go first now.
So, first of all, you have to understand most of the schools, when they invite you for campus, you're still, even though you passed the first pass, they will be having 3 or 4 candidates or even more sometimes. So how to be that one candidate is very critical. And a lot of the rules that you applied for 20 minutes interview, and there were great suggestions from Mike, Craig, and Bala. I think you should follow all of them. But one that becomes even more critical, what Craig was talking, is that knowing the faculty very well. I think at this point, you will be meeting with most of the faculty. So how would your conversation go with this faculty? You have to really go deep, not just broadly. No, it's a good idea to even read the relevant papers. They would like to hear about, how you think you will fit in the culture. Any school that hires you would like to see that you are a good citizen. In addition to doing good research, you can collaborate with people. So how do you give that impression? Also, you have to have a different preparation for talking to faculty, department head, deans. They don't all want to hear the same thing. Means deans will have a different perspective that they want to know. Always go and see the vision of the school, vision of the department, what they plan to do, what kind of courses they offer, in addition to the research part. And when you're preparing your talk should be very clean. You have to decide what paper you would present that should fit well with the faculty. But one very important thing that I see problem when people don't get offered is that you prepare it very well, you know what you're going to do, but many schools look very critically on your Q&A part, that how you are answering questions. And many times it's not about what you answer, about if somebody says what will happen if you change the model and all, they're looking for how you think about it. Do you really know inside out about your work? And how to do that? First, you have to know inside out, first thing. But second, you also have to do a lot of mock interviews with your faculty, even with fellow students, and generate different possible scenarios. So, don't just, if you have done well at one place, don't think you will do well at other place. You have to really customize and very well prepared. You should look like when you go there that you are very interested in this school from cultural aspect, research aspect, teaching aspect, vision aspect, and you can connect well. I think those things, if you do, you will increase your chances several notches.
Quick job talk, 30, 35, 40 minutes, do's and don'ts.
Sure. So I think one of the best practices for any job talk, and I hope this is a general thought here, is that you should lead off with a big picture view of your overall research agenda and areas and interests, what your near term, say 5-year plan is, kind of setting up what your trajectory is. That's really going to set the stage for people understanding the context in which this more detailed part of your talk is going to fit. Then you're going to go into your research. But as Bala hinted at, right, the audience here might be very diverse. You might have folks from other departments. You might have the dean. You might have people from outside even the college sitting in that room. And so depending upon the size of the institution, really. So, you might be tempted to go deep into the science or the math or the statistics or whatever. But make sure that you have enough there that more general audience can still be entertained and informed and stay awake. So, yeah.
It's really critical. I think, we have a department, we have information system folks, we have, operations research folks, we have production operations managed, analytical guys, we have empirical. So I think a lot of times I see the presentation in about first 10 minutes, people tune you off because, they already lost you in first 10 minutes. So I think that is probably one of the most important, part of your campus visit, how you make that interesting and appealing to folks. So Mike is going to tell us how you're going to do that. Mike, you're going to tell us.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, if I think about the job talk, I completely agree with echo the points of Subodha and Craig. I'll see if I can add anything further other than just kind of reiterating that. I think, the job talk, to me, the job talk is actually about more than your research. It is about your research, but this is people's opportunity to see you up in front of a group, which you're going to be a business school professor, right? You're going to have to be up in front of groups a lot, right? So they're assessing, so we'll take it one part at a time. They're assessing your research. As Craig said, great idea. Don't just talk about one paper. Give them a sense that you have kind of a passion and a direction, and this is where I'm taking this research. And the research technical part should be rock solid. As Subodha said, it should be clear that you know more about this than anyone else in the world, right? So kind of competence on delivering your research, but in terms of engaging the room, not everyone's going to be in your research area, et cetera. There definitely people in the room will be looking at how you present. Especially if the dean's in there or department heads are in there, they're thinking, can I put this person in an MBA classroom? Is this person ready to be a business school professor and represent this institution as a business school faculty member? So your presentation style, your level of energy and engagement is really important. Don't go up there and read your slides, right? Don't go up there and just, make it clear that you don't have strong presentation skills, because they're thinking about that as well. And then the Q&A, Subodha alluded to this as well. I think the Q&A is crucial in terms of, so they're going to assess your research, of course. They're going to get glimpses into your teaching, but the Q&A is where they're going to also get some glimpses into personality. And so how you handle questions. Do you get defensive, right? Obviously you don't, right? But go into the Q&A with a positive kind of growth mindset type approach, right? You appreciate the feedback. You don't get defensive. People will pick up on how you handle the criticism. And you want to look competent and confident, but at the same time, you want to, not be dismissive of feedback. You want to show that you appreciate the feedback, and even if the feedback is misguided, right, which it might be, you still want to, how you handle questions, including possibly admitting that you've never thought about that before. That's okay. That's much better than faking it, right? If someone brings up, have you thought about this? And you say, actually, that's a great idea, and I haven't thought about it, is much better than another response. So I would say that I think the job talk is crucial for a lot more than just convincing them that your research is good.
Yeah, that balance of confidence and humility is, it's so important, because you can easily have people immediately write you off if you're too far one way or the other.
So if you're bound to be nervous. I mean, I'm very nervous when I make a presentation. My palms sweat, right? So you have to manage that, and also there will be difficult people in the room. Doesn't happen often, fortunately for us in our institution, but occasionally you get some person there to just make you look bad, no matter what you do. You have cases like that, unfortunately, and also sometimes you simply don't know the answer, right? How do you manage all that, Subodha? Simply, I don't know the answer. Is it okay just to say that I don't know the answer for this? And if you have somebody who's coming after you with some agenda, now how do you manage that person? And we all know that happens sometimes, right? Because they may have another favorite candidate coming the next week.
Yeah, you can be in all possible scenario, everything what Bala mentioned, but on top of that, even unknowingly, I have seen situations where you did the right thing, faculty just telling the wrong thing. Okay. A is a special case of B or B is a special case of A. Faculty got confused and they think they're right. You can be in that situation as well. Now, couple of things. First of all, exactly what Mike and Greg were saying that about you should never sound like you are uh, upset, you are offended about the comment. That never works well. You have to take it in the way that, yes, I take this comment. Now, how to handle it will be, you have to adapt to the situation, but the few common things that generally works is that be calm about it. If you have no clue how to answer that, you can just say that this is, as you know, as was suggested earlier, great point, and I will certainly go back and look into that. But many times it is possible that you have not done it, but you may have some good way to explain that what might happen if I change this part, if I include this variable, if I change my model in this way, then this could go in these possible directions. Don't overclaim, but you can give some directions. That's likely these things may change, and people like to see how you are thinking, not necessarily your answer that you are claiming that may go in that direction. So if you have no ideas, it's always better to say, no, I have not done it, but I'll certainly go back and look into that. But if you think you have some idea on what direction it can go, and you can also do some rehearse on possible directions people can pick on, I think you can go. Even if people are coming with an agenda or people are being hostile, I think the best strategy is to stay calm, don't look perturbed about it, and show that positiveness. I think Craig was saying in the start that, it's a very brutal field. We get all the negative comments every day. I got one rejection today. And generally, they're not very nice, right? So that practice of being calm helps you with the review process also, not just in the interview. If your reaction every time is that reviewers are stupid, that doesn't work. So that you have to display in full display. You have to be there when you're there. You have to be really and practice that. Okay, that's why in our department seminar many times we are brutal, more brutal than what we should be, but we say we are training you for the outside world actually. So learn that, practice that, how to be, means maybe I should say that or not, but you should be a good actor if you're not your personality like that. But if you are able to show any agitation in your voice or your demeanor, I don't think that will fly well. So it doesn't matter what the intentions of other person are. Be calm and see if you can answer. If not, that accept it and move on. That would be my suggestion.
So thanks to both. So Craig, in terms of presentation, actual presentation, right? I mean, you got I don't know, too many slides, too few slides. What's on those slides? Because I remember one case where the slides were so full of stuff. I mean, it's very hard to get anything out of it. People are proving their theorems on the slides. And so could you give us some guidance on how to put the slides together? Most candidates have some, presentation. They use slides, right. But give us some, the pointers on how best to put those together.
I'm presenting is such a generalized skill. I mean, we use it in teaching, we use it in presenting our research, we use it all the time. So Yeah, I mean, never turn down an opportunity to present, even if it's an audience of 2 people, and one of them's a cat, right? Present. But I think in general you're going to get a sense of your own style, what your tendencies are. But you should also study people who present well and see what their best practices are. My personal style is I budget about a minute a slide. And I found that'll keep me right about on track. Some are going to be shorter, some are going to be longer, but about a minute a slide. But I also I studied some of our graphic design faculty here at UC. We have a world-class design school, and I noticed that they had lots of slides with absolutely no words on them at all, just a picture, and then they would speak about whatever that picture represented. And I started incorporating that into my presentations, and it is amazing things to perk up people's attention. If they aren't, if every slide isn't a wall of text, you're going to do much better in terms of keeping people's attention. But no, I think the number one idea with presenting though is practice. You don't want to sound like you've memorized it, that you're going off of a mental script word for word, but you want to have a sense of what every slide is, what the core concept is, and what the transition or segue is to the next slide. That will make you seem very polished and on top of your own topic. So, gents.
Thank you for all those. I gathered a number of questions over the years from our PhD. They said, "Oh, can you ask this question?" So I make a list every year. Every year I see what's on the chat. I make a list and keep it. So I'm going to go through my list so you can give us some pointers, guidance. So meeting with faculty individually or in groups. Let's suppose you finished your presentation, you feel good about it, and now comes the harder part, that you have to meet individually. Some schools meet individually, some schools in a group. We tend to do it in a group because it's too much when you have 36 faculty, send a candidate to everybody's office for 20 minutes. That's probably not the best way to that. By the time after about 10, the candidate is so exhausted. So how do you manage your meeting with faculty, individual or in group? Some do's, don'ts. So I'm going to start with Craig because I'm going around here. Craig, you get the first stab on this.
Sure. I think this goes back to my point I made earlier about preparing. The more you know about the people you're going to be meeting with, the more you're going to be prepared to speak with them about the things that interest them, identify overlaps between your research space, your long-term career, goals, and what they individually or as a department are looking for. So the more you can do to prepare and understand who the faculty are, if you can get an itinerary ahead of time in terms of exactly who you're going to be meeting with, that's like an instant cheat sheet. So I would definitely spend an evening in the days or leading up to your visit learning the faculty. The other thing is not every person you speak to is going to be all warm and fuzzy. They're going to be just people who are not very personable, and that might be an awkward 20 or 30 minutes. So make sure that you have some questions, as I said, kind of in your back pocket that you can ask them that they will feel very comfortable talking about, and that might kind of eat up the time. And I know that's a kind of a cynical answer, but sometimes you just have to get through that meeting before you get to the next meeting where you might actually have a lot more in common. So I don't know, Mike Sabota?
Mike?
Yeah, great advice. I mean, I would say definitely, we've said it a couple of times now, but I'll just say it again. Have questions. Yeah. If you are asked, do you have questions? The answer is yes. Never say no questions. I'm good. Even if you've already asked the question to somebody else, ask it to this group, and that's kind of interesting. You'll see if they give you the same answer, right? So I always have questions, and even it's kind of like, tell me what it's like to live in this city. Something like that just shows that you're engaged and interested. The only other thing I would maybe add is, and this probably goes for all the way back to conference interviews and everything, don't talk the whole time. Right. So don't kind of monopolize the 30 minutes. Sometimes it's hard to draw them out and things like that, but you want it to be a conversation. Definitely, we probably all have experiences where we got a 30-minute meeting with a candidate and I didn't say a word the whole time because they started and then we were at 30 minutes and they were still talking. Right. And so you want it to be a two-way dialogue, not a monologue. They may have some questions for you. They may want to steer the conversation in a certain area. So be sure to not go off on long monologues, but be a little bit more engaged.
So, Bodh, how important is it to be authentic? And I give you a lot of, I meet colleagues in interviews. I mean, they probably read your paper that you wrote 30 years ago that, they talk about as if, well, I read your seminal paper or whatever you wrote. And there's a tendency to tell you what you want to hear in some cases. And at least those of us who are in the business for a long time, we probably won't go very well with that. So talk about being authenticity during the interview.
Yeah, I mean, this is very important as Bala told, it is not very difficult to figure out that you are just trying to be nice or you genuinely mean it. Once people figure out, actually that sounds a lot worse if you just try to be super nice for the sake of being nice. So I can give you examples, as Bala was saying that, I read your paper, seminal paper, it is good. Rather, if you really like the paper, you talk about, I really like that how it is done this way, and I really see this as huge potential. So have something substantive, but more than that, you can always, once when you research about people or the group, you can always find something that you find fascinating, genuinely. Focus on that rather than trying to force yourself. It does not go well in most of the cases. Occasionally, you may uh, pass by those things, but most of the time I can guarantee you it does not go well. So try to find out the things that you really found great. Wow, that was a great thing, and talk about that and how you connect with that. That will go very, very well, and people can then see that why you are saying what you are saying. So I think being authentic is extremely, extremely important. Uh, you have to connect with people and all those things, but if you try to be not what you are, I think you will get caught. And in fact, it comes in the discussions when people talk about the candidates. Uh, Even one person brings it up, other will start looking at from that angle. So be very watchful on that.
Greg, anything to add on authenticity, meeting with faculty, dealing with the difficult faculty?
Yeah, I mean, you're in an interview. You can't be totally authentic, right? Because you're in an interview. So sometimes you need to be nice. But that said, you should be expressing to them who you are, just as you hope they express to you who they are. Because if this is going to be a place where you're going to work, hopefully you have a good preview of what you're getting yourself into. I actually think that's one of the cool things about asking them about, say that, I worked on this question for a long time to try and figure out, the right way to introduce the idea of, so what's it like to work here? So asking them about the organization or the department's culture or the college's culture, it leaves it up to them to interpret that question however they want. And you can get some interesting reactions. And that's a question you can ask to virtually everybody you meet with. And they're all going to give you this very hyper-personalized perspective on, do people get along with each other? Do people go out to lunch together? Is there nobody ever in any offices? Those kinds of things are going to kind of come out from the answer, and it's really useful. Plus, it also spawns infinite numbers of follow-up questions. So there's no reason to have silent time in a meeting. But as Bala said, you definitely, or sorry, as Mike said, I forget which of you said this. You definitely want this to be a dialogue. Monopolizing the conversation or sitting there just being the recipient, neither of those is ideal.
So, well, Craig, I think you said it eloquently, that you have to be authentic, but also be a little tactful, right? I mean, you don't want to criticize somebody. And I'll give you an example. Many years ago, we're doing an interview, and I was in the dean's office, and I asked somebody, hey, if you make an offer to you, would you take it? Right? Are we at the top of your list? Poor fellow, I think, should have said something I wanted to hear, but he was being very authentic. He said, well, my top choice is that other school in Austin. You come to Texas A&M, that's the last thing you want to hear. And needless to say, the person didn't get the job. Poor fellow, he was being very honest. I think he was being, but
a little too honest. Yeah,
way too honest. Yeah. You have to.
Does this dress make me look fat? Right. That's the question you want to answer.
Strike that balance, being authentic and being, just not being very tactful about stuff. So, so good. But I want to switch gears.
Yeah, if I can add one thing.
Yeah, so, go ahead. Sorry. Huh?
Talking to Bala and Greg, I would like to add that, yes, being authentic is very fine, but you don't want to be neither rude, or you don't want to say that, just in the sake of being authentic, this is not the kind of research I want to do what you're doing. I don't think that is going to fly very well. Or, I don't like the sports culture, and if you go to Texas A&M and say that. So I think even if you have that in your mind, hold on. I don't think it's a good idea to spell that out on the name of being authentic. As I told, find the positive things that you can talk about and stick to that and be authentic in that. But there's no point to bring out negative thing for the sake of being authentic. I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, just as an example, I went to an interview, a campus interview for a place I was not terribly excited about. I just didn't see the fit. But my advisor said, look, you're going to talk with a bunch of people in your field who you probably should know. They will get to know you. It's a win-win. Just go, enjoy yourself, have a good time. This isn't, you're not getting married. This is just meeting people. So go and, spend the day. And I think that's a good approach, is that even if you might not be real excited about a place, you might come away a lot more excited than you expected. At the minimum, you're going to know a bunch of people you didn't know before.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with that completely. And one more quick, I know, Bala, you want to move on, but one more point, John, kind of for what it's worth. Talk about, if they bring up, well, I really liked your paper back in whenever. So, I mean, the way, and this could be just me, but, we have 30 minutes. There's so many things that we could talk about. I really don't want to talk about my research. I mean, we could talk about about the culture, about your research. I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about my paper from 20 years ago. Now, if you want to bring it up because it inspired a certain project of yours or something like that, but I do think that there's so many good things to talk about. Probably the research of the interviewer wouldn't be high on my list personally.
I'm going to check the chat. There's a question. You're okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, participants, that you can post questions on chat. One of us will respond to you during the conversation. There's one. Thank you for very useful insights. Can you also shed some light on the teaching aspect when it comes to campus interviews? Is there a teaching demo as well? What kind of questions, surprises can we expect? Excellent question. Excellent question. Mike, you want to take that? You're a department head, current department head.
So that's a great question. So for teaching focused positions, non-research positions, non-tenure track positions, we do a teaching demo. Maybe we should, but we generally do not do a teaching demo for tenure track positions. Again, that's kind of, I go back to the importance of the job talk, especially for rookie candidates. That is where we assess, can this person get up in front of a room and keep us engaged and keep us interested? And we feel like that's a very good indicator. I do know other schools that do require a teaching demo for tenure track positions. I went through one or two of those back when I went on the market. But I think it's more about using the job talk for that assessment. In terms of questions or surprises, you can certainly expect teaching to come up a lot in your one-on-ones, especially with the department head and the dean. So you should be ready for here are things I'm excited about teaching. I think that would be the operative word, right? I would really look forward to teaching this. I've taught it as a student, et cetera. So I would be prepared with what you're most interested in teaching and how you would respond to various questions about would you like to teach the core? Do you see yourself as an MBA teacher? The question to those, there's no right answer to those questions, but I think you should just be ready for those type of questions.
Excellent. So I will talk about a little bit, perhaps less important, but this can impact your, your impression that you make. Etiquette, some etiquette for like a faculty take you out to meals or the department head take you out to meals. And I think, people do watch how you conduct yourself in, situation. We are business school professors, so we're expected to have great etiquette with meetings. So give us a sense of how to conduct ourselves while having a meal. I mean, it's not that important, but it can be very important. And I'll give you examples why I knew it's really important. So both the etiquette, meals etiquette and etiquette at the reception. We get a lot of receptions. We give receptions to, all the candidates who come to town. How best to conduct ourselves?
Yeah, see, you will hear it a lot of time, especially if you go to a place like Texas A&M. Oh, be relaxed. And you don't have to be very formal. You are in a informal setting now. But you have to understand, you are still there for interview. There is nothing informal about it. It is very formal. And Texas A&M is a culture. We take even candidates at houses, one of the houses for very informal dinner rather than just taking to restaurant. We used to do very often when I was there. Which is not true with many schools. You can be in those kind of situations, or you can be formal lunches, dinner. Formal lunches, dinner, of course, is a little bit easier to understand. But even in informal setting, I'll say that don't get too informal. For example, don't get too drunk. That's a basic rule. Or don't pick when they say, oh, you can pick whatever wine you want. I know Bala knows what I'm saying. Don't pick $600 bottle. And this doesn't look good. It has happened, and that's why I told Bala knows. So I think you have to be very careful with that. I think the best way to deal with it is that you take that as an opportunity to interact more with people and just be natural and formal. Don't go beyond that. That's what I will say. And Bala, if you want, I can also answer one of the questions I saw in the chat with
sorry,
Satare
yeah.
is
So
asking.
please, any one of you take the question.
Yeah,
That's for you. Huh?
So I will say Satare was asking what is your favorite question you have been asked. This was in my first job talk where I got the job, University of Washington. I was asked that in next 5 years and next 10 years, what would you contribute to the community? Very interesting question. I was not fully prepared for that, but think about that. That will be my favorite question. I still tease the person who asked this question because he turned out to be my most co-authored person later. But that will be my favorite question that I was asked. Okay. Oh, Bala, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mike, Craig, either one of you, look at it has to do with the diversity statement. Remember, there was many couple of years that the last several years that the prospective employees have to create a diversity statement. They could have conversation about that. We stopped because in the state of Texas, they made it unlawful to do that a couple of years ago. We don't do that anymore, but we did before. Can you, I don't know if the schools are still doing that. You have any perspective on that, Mike?
Yeah, we're in a similar situation. This is no longer a kind of a formal part of the process, but it's something that you should feel free to include in your kind of your personal statement in your materials that you submit. And if it's a passion area of yours, we would love for you to bring it up. I mean, that's something that we value a lot. And if that's something that's important to you and you have ideas or you want to hear more about it, I think that even though it may not be a formal part of the process, if this is an area that you're passionate about, we love to hear about it, and you should definitely bring it up in conversations.
Yeah, similar. We removed the requirement that candidates submit a diversity statement, but inclusive excellence is one of the strategic pillars for the Lanier College of Business. And so if that is an aspect of either your research or your teaching or just your outlook on life, we more than encourage people to bring it up and share that with us. That's absolutely important.
Thanks. So I want to, what would be a great answer for the question, are we your top choice? And that question banks virtually every time. That's a trap. So somebody want to take that question? Are we your top choice?
So see, I think this is of course a tricky question. Nobody, if you say that we are not your top choice, then clearly if you're tying with somebody else, or even if somebody is lower, they will pick you because they also want to make sure the people accept this question. I don't know whether there's a right or wrong answer to it, but I have found a way where the good people, or maybe more, I will say the smart way to handle this is that you are certainly one of my top choices, and I'm really looking at different factors when I'm making the decision. But you, for these particular reasons, you are certainly among my top choices. I don't think it's a good idea to say that, yeah, you are my number three, or you are my number two. Unless the school is number one for you, then it's an easy answer, of course. Then you have no doubt. Then you should say that you are my number one, and you should emphasize. Otherwise, the best way is said that you are certainly among one of my top choices, and for these reasons. Provide the reasons, don't just say that. That would be my best advice to deal with this kind of question.
So I want to change a little bit. Oh, sorry, Craig, do you want to add something, Craig?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, some of the best answers I've gotten to that question, not that I ask it very often. I think we only would ask it if we are down to, our final two and which one are we going to make the offer to first, is, hey, I'm still in the interviewing process. I'm still learning about my options. And so I don't really have a formal ranking, but I remain deeply interested in your position, right? That's about as clear a signal as you can give without kind of boxing yourself into a specific answer.
And very tactful indeed. Very tactful way to present it. So I want to change a little bit. So I want to focus on, so you finished your job talk, you met with individual faculty members, and then you had your lunch, and you behaved well at lunch. But now it's time to meet with the department head, right? Because that might be one of the key visits that you had during your campus visit. So give us some guidance on how do you manage that visit with the department head. We typically give them 30 minutes with the department head or 40 minutes. What kind of questions to ask to the department head? And, so I'm going to start with Mike. Mike is a current department head. You're a lucky guy. Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would say, don't get the cart before the horse in terms of, don't start talking about the details of the position. You don't have the position yet. It's not time to talk about obviously salary, or, you can bring up teaching load if you want, but first things first, I would expect that the department is probably going to talk about what you want to teach. Like, how would you fit in to our teaching mission? So I'd be prepared walking in that might come up. And there would probably be some discussion about research, but not at a low level, not at a technical level, but more the department head's going to try to determine if you are we'll be set up well for a path towards tenure. That's the idea, right? As an assistant professor, right? So being willing to show and able to demonstrate, here's the trajectory, I've got this laid out. I mean, I think everybody would agree when we hire somebody, we only want to hire people that we're confident can get tenure, right? Nobody wants to go through that. So convince the department head, I've got a plan. Maybe I've got my first paper, but here's the sequence of papers I have going. I think that's the conversation to have. And then here's what I'd like to teach. Maybe even ask the department head, if you want to score points, ask the department head what they need teaching wise. What's the best way I can help teaching wise? That will that will get you some points. But I would focus on that. It's probably a little bit premature to talk about, again, the nuts and bolts of the position because you haven't been offered the position yet. And I guess it goes to the question. So Aman said, should we convey interest in multiple research areas or one area? That's a tricky one because to some extent, I almost want to say one area because first things first, you need to convince everyone that you have a research agenda that will get you to tenure, right? And that's not going to happen if you have 5 disparate projects, right? So convince everyone that you have a solid single research domain. And then if you also want to talk about additional projects, that can indicate, some intellectual curiosity. I have this, but I'm just so excited about this. I'm also doing a separate project, but I would not lose sight of I have a single path that I'm excited to develop.
Subodha? Meeting with the department heads.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was on mute. So I think department head is not really like you can't be totally like high level as the dean, I feel. And Mike can tell always better is the department head. But what I feel is at the department head level, you have to talk about your research, how you will make tenure, how you will be a good teacher. They want to see a good teachers as well. How you will contribute to the department by collaborating with other faculty, by maybe developing interesting courses and so on. But they also want to hear about, means there will be a good place where you will have a discussion around how would the department head perceive a candidate to be a good citizen, right? Or what from the department perspective is a very successful candidate as I go forward in my midterm review or tenure review or in general in annual review. So I think take that opportunity to show your willingness to gel well with the department in addition to showing your research and teaching interest, how you can contribute and ask good questions about that citizenship. That will also give a good signal. And as I think Bala and other panelists were earlier saying, it's also a good place to ask questions about the place, about what is the culture of the town and those kind of things. Department heads like to hear that. That gives a good signal to them. So I would certainly recommend that take the discussion to that level when you're talking to department head.
Craig, I'm going to ask you about the same question, but not department head. It's a very different meeting with the deans, right? In our college, every candidate that comes through the door will go to the dean's office for about 30 minutes. In my previous role, I've done that many times. I get 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes, deans pretty much make up their mind. Deans, keep in mind their objective may be a little different than the department faculty, and so how do you conduct that meeting with the deans? What do you say? What not to say? And how do you impress the heck out of your dean?
The dean is a special kind of meeting for sure. The ones that I've sat in on, either as candidate or as someone who is kind of there in the room, there's a little dance, right? There's a little dance between the dean wanting to know a little bit more about you, because it's very unlikely the dean has taken a deep dive into your resume. At best, the dean probably has a short summary about who you are, where you're from, maybe what you're working on. They know what department you're applying to, and that may be about the extent of it. So they might be curious about kind of some of your background, but don't belabor that. This is not a 20-minute presentation about your research. I would say that it's probably a wiser approach to balance giving a brief background about who you are, and then asking the dean about their vision for the college and the university moving forward, because the dean is uniquely positioned to have that oversight over all the departments and awareness of a lot of factors that maybe even the department heads are not aware of. So asking some pointed questions, not pointed questions, but asking some targeted questions about, where do you see the future of the college going? Are there some strategic initiatives that you think align well with, my skills, or how I could contribute to those? Right, those are some questions that deans would love to answer. But in terms of you telling them about you, this is a piece of advice that I've given every doctoral student that I've ever had. And that is, you need a bunch of different versions of you. You need the keyword version, which is, if you can say 3 words about yourself, what are those? You need the 1 sentence version of you, which is, if you're literally just shaking hands with somebody, how are you going to introduce yourself? You need the 1 paragraph version of yourself, which is, you're in an elevator with somebody or in an escalator, and you're going to give an overview in 2 sentences or 3 sentences. You need the 20-minute version of you, which is kind of a presentation at a conference, and then you need the 45-minute job talk. So you need to have all of those kind of ready to go at all times. It is very telling to meet a doctoral student and say, "Oh, so what are you working on?" And the context should tell them that you want the 1 or 2 sentence version, and they start in on the 20-minute version. And right there, you're like, okay, this person is not ready. So
that's really a great advice, because I never, it's the first time I heard it that way. It's absolutely, I think you have to have a multiple version of yourself and know exactly which version to deploy at what time. I think that's a fantastic advice, Craig. So I want to ask, one of the things that most deans like talk about strategic planning. I mean, every dean that I work with many deans, we all love, so most schools have strategic plan on their website, right? So it might be a good idea to just at least just take a quick look at the strategic plan, so you can ask some questions that deans are excited about. Deans are always excited about. Every dean that I work with about 5 deans, strategic plan. That's all I hear all the time. So take the time to read the strategic plan, and have some good ideas to talk about to the deans. The deans, that nothing excites them more than that the fact that you read their strategic plan. Yeah. So I want again, let's suppose we got to move on. So we did all these, and you left the town. You have finished the interview. You departed the town. What is the protocol after departure? Right? You interviewed all day. You met all these people. You met the deans, and it's been a very, very difficult, very very challenging day. I mean, everybody the whole day. But now you're on your plane. You're going back home. So how do we conduct ourselves after when we return home? Yeah, that's key, because between then and in a couple of weeks, they'll be making a choice about whether to hire or not. Right? So, Mike, talk about the protocol after the interview, Mike.
Send thank yous. Send thank yous to everybody. I mean, there's no downside to sending. It takes. I know you're tired on the plane. It's all upside just to send a nice email. Thank you. The worst case is that they just kind of quickly glance at it and file it away or delete it. But the best case is that you stand out as someone who's thoughtful, you're thorough, you follow up. It's just a good indicator that you have your act together and you're thoughtful. And they can count on you for follow up. So I would follow up with everyone that you talk to with thank yous, including the staff, including the person who booked your flights. They may sometimes be more influential than you think around the department in terms of their opinion about your personality and things like that. So send really sincere thank yous to everyone. I think it's fine to inquire about timeline. You probably inquired about that while you were during the interview. That would be a good thing to ask the department head, for example, or the search chair committee. I think it's fine to ask for a sense of timeline. And then I would not and then I would respect that timeline, right? Then there's no need to ask for updates every couple days. Just you have the timeline; they'll tell you when the decision's coming. But I think closing the loop with some kind of thoughtful, maybe personalized to what you talked about to the extent that you can, thank yous, is a good signal of the kind of colleague you would be.
So both, is it okay to call them and ask them when you might be getting an offer? I mean, is it an appropriate thing to do?
See, if unless you have a reason, I don't think there's any point doing that. What I always recommend to students is that if you get an offer, or if you have to make a decision, anyway, it's always a good idea to inform everybody who has shown interest on you or have interviewed you. It's a good courtesy, and you don't know what will come out of it. So you should always do that. Just because you are getting anxious, I don't think there's any reason to do that. I don't think there's any serious harm to it, but there's particularly, I don't advise it. So I'll say wait for it. If there's a way to show interest, for example, you got a revision, you got an acceptance. I think that is a good place to show that, I've got this update and I really wanted to show you. Sometimes I have seen even students doing things like, I submitted a new paper, or in this conference my paper has been nominated. It does not have to be something huge, but use that as an excuse and all. And you can present it like, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, rather than being a direct question. So that is my usual advice. It comes out very well as well. But if you have an offer, or if you have to make a decision, for sure you should certainly write to the school and explain your situation. And you can even say that I have a tight deadline. I think schools appreciate that most of the time.
But be truthful. But we have had cases who said, "Oh, we have an offer from such and such school," but this is a very small community. We all know exactly who is in the market, who is looking at them. So I think it's extremely important that you are truthful with those.
Yeah.
Happens sometimes where people tell us they have an offer, and we discover that they have no offers from there.
Yeah.
Which doesn't bode well for you in a profession that as small as we are. So we have 15 minutes, and I have a question by Robert here. Does anyone want to take that?
Yeah, so are there any sources that I could reference to help prepare for these types of job interviews? Your faculty. Schedule some appointments, 20 to 30-minute meetings with the faculty in your department, and have them do some mock interviews. Your faculty probably have done these a lot in their time at the university, and they could certainly put you through the ringer. In fact, you could even ask them to be a little argumentative or play some kind of role to help you deal with different kinds of scenarios. So, your advisor is probably the first person to start with, but find some faculty who you're comfortable with asking for this favor, and that's probably a good place I'd start. I don't know, Mike Sabota.
Mike, you know of any resources? I know Informs does a lot of industry jobs in Informs, production operations management. We do some. Are there any resources that you know of that can be helpful to them to prepare for interviews?
I have to say, I've never had a student pursuing this industry, so I've not gone through that process. So I wouldn't have. I would say mock interview with faculty, particularly faculty who have maybe worked a lot with technology and finance firms. So for example, we have a couple faculty that I would send someone to that will probably know the kind of questions that Google will ask, or firms like that. So try to seek someone out to do mock interviews. But unfortunately, I don't know of any specific resources. Informs might be a good place to start to look.
And also, a lot of our business schools have very good career services for MBAs. We are major resources for MBA. That might be a place that go to the career service, so they might have some suggestions in terms of how to pursue industry jobs or R&D positions in technology and finance. So that's because we spend a lot of time, a lot of resources into preparing MBA students for such similar markets. So I want to. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
can add one thing.
Uh-huh.
So these days, there are actually a lot of dedicated blogs and the forums for these things. Actually, the academic ones is harder. Finding for R&D positions are actually easier. So don't restrict. Means it's always good to talk to faculty, especially those who has worked in industry and all. I think that's a great idea. Career service is great. But in addition to those, also go out and look for those. Those may be beyond, and Informs has some, POMS has some, but go beyond that. And you will find actually very interesting blogs these days. In fact, some of these websites are designed using generative AI also, and not all are good, but some of them I hear is doing a good job in that. So search for that. I think there are a lot of resources you can find from there as well, in addition to your faculty and career centers.
Craig, there's a question from Alexander Maslov. Would you want to take that question?
Yeah, so I saw that. So, how important are thank you emails after the first round of interviews, so Zoom or at a conference? I think they're always important, right? If you're using faculty members' time and you are interested in that position, I would definitely send a thank you email. And again, these thank you emails don't need to be pages long. They could be 2, 3 sentences. Just make them sincere. I would make them overly formal, kind of, personalize them a bit. I really appreciate the time you and I spent talking at Informs or on Zoom. I'm really looking forward to hearing about next steps in the interview process. If I can, answer any other questions, please let me know. Thank you very much. Right, that's something that long would be ideal. But yeah, thank you emails are great.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I
sorry,
will
go ahead.
add two, three things there. In addition to what Craig was mentioning, number one, don't be too late in sending those emails when it's fresh in everybody's mind. They like to hear that. Don't try to club faculty together like for the whole department sending one email. Some people have heard taking it in the negative manner. Again, it depends on the personality of the people, so avoid that. Sending separate emails will never hurt, I can guarantee you. As Craig told, you don't have to write the whole Bible there. You can just be very brief. If you want, you can add a sentence about something interesting happened, let's say, like you got into discussion of some paper and they mentioned that, why don't you go read that paper? You can mention that, yes, I read that paper, or I found that paper. It was very intriguing, and I'm seeing how I can incorporate. If need, don't force it. If it is very natural, that something interesting came out in the discussion that you want to point out, do that. But keep it brief. I think that is critical, and send it soon.
We have 10 minutes. I have one last topic I want to touch on. It is an important topic. Let's suppose I got an offer. I'm lucky enough, went through all this process, then finally got an offer. I give us some pointers on how best to negotiate an offer, Mike. You're the department head, so you should know you've been doing this every day, right?
Yeah, I
Some
mean, a
do's
couple.
and some don'ts in negotiating an offer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do's and don'ts. Yeah, do's and don'ts. I mean, I would say, so you receive an offer, a counter offer is not unexpected. You don't have to counter, by the way. But a counter offer is not unexpected. Kind of one don't, I'm just thinking over the years, be careful. Some things you don't want to ask for, right? I mean, don't ask for a parking spot next to the dean, right? I mean, first of all, you probably won't get it. And second of all, you really don't want to be a new assistant professor with better parking than everybody that's been there 20 years, right? So don't be careful about kind of asking for any sort of special treatment-y type things that might have you coming in on the wrong foot. Again, you don't have to counter. There is something to be said for you got a good fair market offer and you accepted it. Remember, this is kind of your first interactions with your employer. But most people do counter, which is expected and fine. So especially if you have multiple offers, you're going to come back and ask for something. But again, in these negotiations, remember, these are very likely your first interactions with a dean who you're going to be working for. So you want to keep it very reasonable. One don't that comes to mind is if you come back with a counter, that's your one shot, right? You can't then up it later, right? So you can't say, thank you for the offer. I would really like the salary to be X. And then they come back and make the salary X. And then you say, thank you very much. I'd also like the research budget to be increased by 50%. that starts sending a very bad signal. You kind of come back with what you want. And so think about it carefully, because that's kind of your one shot. You can't then increase your ask later without giving a very bad impression. And again, this whole negotiation is getting your career off to on the right foot. So you want it to be collegial and maybe not dig in for every last thing if it gets things off to a more adversarial start. But at the same time, you got to ask for it now, because it's a whole lot easier to get it in writing, get it in the initial offer than try to come back later. So things like research support is very reasonable to say, hey, I would like to get this kind of a little bit more firmed up in writing, that I'll have this for X years. That's very reasonable. Yeah.
How about compensation?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's reasonable if you feel the market, if you feel that the compensation level is not at the market rate, then it's reasonable to ask for more. It's also very possible that you have gotten a good market rate offer, and I think it's appreciated when people give a good market offer, that people accept it. But it's reasonable if you feel it's under market, but don't just counter it just to counter it. If you have higher offers, I think it's fine to share that. Tell me I'm interested, but this offers X $1,000 below another one I'm holding that has similar terms in terms of teaching, et cetera. I would want, the deans and everyone wants to know that if you have kind of evidence that the market is not up, that the offer is not up to market, then it's completely reasonable to share that. And I would want you to share that, because I want my offer to be competitive.
Craig, how do you is it okay to ask for an extension? And how do we do that in a way that you still keep that good relationship with the institution? And what kind of compelling reasons we might use to ask for an extension, Craig?
Yeah, timing is the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to this, because a lot of institutions will be very strategic about the timing of their offers, or the attempt to get in early and lock in promising candidates who might fear that they're going to be left without an offer at all. Timing is so hard. If you've received a very early offer, I think it's reasonable, if not fair, to just to ask for an extension, right? Especially if you're given an early offer, say like in November, and they're wanting you to make a decision within a week. I think that's unreasonable. And the reason that I would push back with that is I still have several interviews lined up. I can't in good faith accept your offer while I have also accepted these campus visits. And so, that serves you well, while also sending a clear signal to the institution that their tactic is probably not going to work with you. You already have an offer. The worst thing they can do is say, no, you don't get an extension. If that's the case, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Either you're going to take the risk that accept the risk that you may not get another offer, or you're going to accept the offer in hand, knowing that you may have left something on the table. There's no magic solution to that I found. If you guys know of one, definitely let me know.
Subodh, well, a last question about the offer, then I want to give you, each one of you, give you some, closing wisdom to the young folks in the market. Subodh, what is the best practice in declining an offer? What is a good way to say, I love you guys, but I'm going to another institution? So any good advice on that, Subodh?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to do it is that you make them feel good, even though you are rejecting the offer. That's the bottom line, because you have to be in the community. Not only you want to be collegial, it is possible that you may have to go back to some institutions at some point of time to that place, or you may cross paths with the person at some point. So my advice is that best way is that, put it in the way that it was a tough decision for you to make that decision. Means it was your honor to get the offer, and it couldn't be harder for you to decline, but because of professional or personal reasons, you have to take the other offer and sound genuine and bring some positive twist to it. I think that's always good, and you should always. I have seen sometimes people let the offer expire without communicating. That I think is a very bad idea. You should certainly communicate, saying, what are the reasons, and not just make it a positive twist and be genuine. That would be my advice.
So I have 1 minute for each one of you, or however long you want. I want you to give some closing thoughts to young folks who are here. They're anxious. They're wondering what's in store for them in the future, like we all have gone through. So, give us the final word to energize them, to keep them optimistic. Craig, you go first.
I think my closing bit of advice would be just at all times be sincere, be yourself, be reasonable, and be clear on your intentions with yourself, right? Don't be thinking, well, I just need any job. That's probably going to land you in a bad space. So I think you should work with your advisor to help you define what your career goals are and what your placement goals are, and then work with him or her to try and make that happen. Right? Don't forget your advisor is a resource. They have lots of experience in this field, and honestly, it's part of their role as your advisor is to help you get a job.
Mike, final thoughts.
I would say, it might sound crazy, but I would say enjoy it. Enjoy this job search process. I know it's seeming very nerve-wracking right now, but really try to enjoy it. This is, as has been mentioned several times, this is a small world that we live in, and this is your kind of entryway into this academic world, and try to be excited about it. And you're going to learn a lot of people. You're going to meet a lot of people, right? And so that would be enjoy the fact that if nothing else during this job search process, you're going to meet a lot of people, start making connections, and try to enjoy this kind of launch of your academic career, and try not to let the nervousness kind of overwhelm really the excitement of this stage of your life.
Subodha, you get the as the president-elect, you get the final word here, Subodha.
Sure, I don't think I have anything wiser than what Mike and Greg did. But in addition to being sincere and enjoying the process, I think those are great points. Always be prepared. Be very prepared, like the Greg mentioned, prepared with different versions. When somebody is in elevator, when the elevator stops, they should be waiting to listen to your things rather than just running out of you. When they have interviewed you, they are thinking about your work and maybe want to understand more about it after 20 minutes. When they invited you for campus, how you can excite people that they talk about your work or think about it. So be very prepared for all the possible scenarios. But yeah, I think enjoying the process, I will say, is still much more important than anything else. This is a once in a lifetime thing, and have fun. If you are sincere, if you are working hard, it doesn't matter what happens, you will be fine in your career.
So I want to thank all three of you. I'm very proud of this initiative from POMS, because I've heard often from previous, participants that you really help them, give a different perspective to have them prepared. So I really appreciate all three of you. I know busy all three of you are. I know quite well how busy you are. So I'm grateful for serving on the panel and for your words of wisdom. Needless to say, we will call on you again and again and again. But Craig, Mike, and Subodha, thank you, sir. And thanks to Sushil and POMS for letting us do this every year. And of course, my colleague, my friend Rakesh, can't do without him. So thank you all. And I think we're exactly 12:30. So we are going to close this and with the goodbye.
And thank you, Bala, and
thank you, Bala.
Thanks to all the participants.
Thank you, Bala, for doing this.
Thank you, Rakesh.
Yep, thank you.